Welcome back, everybody. Derrick Soo, your 2022 Oakland mayoral candidate. Well, today what I want to talk about is earthquake preparedness. We've been, as you know, experiencing a lot of small tremors of recent, and these are going back probably about a little better than a year right now. Well, I want to give you a little insight. Having lived through the previous big earthquake that hit here in the Bay Area, otherwise known as the 1989 Loma Prieta earthquake. Nobody talked about that. What we hear the media talking about a lot is the San Andreas fault, the Hayward fault, but we're not hearing about the other smaller faults that are also involved right here, run through not only Oakland, but just south of the Bay Area. But as we saw with the Loma Prieta, it did a tremendous amount of earthquake damage to the Bay Area. A lot of homes were damaged. The Bay Bridge, a section of the old section of the Bay Bridge had fallen down onto the lower deck. The Cypress freeway collapsed up on itself. And these were structures that were created before earthquake safeties and a lot of awareness was built into the new stuff. So what I want to do as your mayoral candidate, I believe that a mayoral candidate should also be understanding what's going to happen in the next earthquake based upon the previous earthquake and going back as far as the 1906, which was also a very large earthquake that affected and destroyed San Francisco, pretty much a good portion of San Francisco, and then forced the Asian population, because San Francisco didn't want the Chinese folks in San Francisco anymore. So a lot of the Chinese folks, including my family, went from San Francisco to Oakland. Unfortunately, we were already settling Oakland. We had our cannery in place, already built and running at the time of the 1906 earthquake here in Oakland. And we were the primary family that helped the Chinese from San Francisco migrate here to the East Bay and establish Chinatowns. And my family still has our what we call the Family Association in the Oakland Chinatown, and it's very visible still. And we were one of the main families that helped establish the original four corners of the Oakland Chinatown. There's a lot of history in that. And then there was also a lot of racism because of my great-grandfather. But anyway, getting back to the earthquake, 1989, the Loma Prieta earthquake hit during the World Series between the Oakland A's and the San Francisco Giants. At the time, I lived in the city of Alameda out in Bay Farm Island, which is now Harbor Bay Isle. Fortunately, my home was one of the older ones, and it sat on bedrock and not landfill. Like a lot of Bay Farm is landfill, and so that can be very unstable. But my place was on bedrock. And so I was sitting in front of my TV, ready to watch the World Series, and the earthquake happened. I never saw concrete so fluid. Concrete going up and down in ripples, 4 inches tall. As tall as my fingers right there. And I was going up and down. My door wouldn't open to my home. I couldn't, because it was jammed shut. The entire building was moving, so I couldn't get out. I was worried about all my bay windows, the glass exploding, because it's incredible how flexible glass is. I was for sure thinking that the glass was going to explode, so I'm trying to get out of the way of the explosion or implosion in the event that the glass came flying inside the home. But that was originally reported as a 7.2 earthquake. It was downgraded eventually, I believe, as 6.9, but it was an earthquake. But we have a lot of earthquakes here recently, and it's building up just like what happened back in 1989. It actually started lightly towards the end of 1987, went through all of 1988, because there were a lot of small tremors constantly. As my wife and I at that time, our closet door was a big mirrored closet door, and it would rattle every time the slightest shaking of the building. And so there were a lot of them, sometimes 2 or 3 in an evening. And so that was signaling that things were getting closer and closer. And then there was a quiet period of about 43 days of quiet where there was no earthquakes anywhere in the Bay Area. And then we had the big one. A lot of homes were damaged. In fact, my home sustained just cracking in the walls because the swaying of the home. But there were homes that may not have fallen off their foundation right away here in the East Bay, but there was a home in the East Bay Hills that in the winter, because the foundation was weakened and it was architecturally weak, it wasn't architecturally designed to withstand earthquakes, and fortunately that family got out before that home literally slid off the hills here in East Oakland. I was not living at my parents' home at the time. I was already on my own when I heard about it. I came by and saw it. In fact, the foundation, what's left of the foundation, just a few little bits and pieces are still there. That piece of property cannot be sold. The insurance company that insured the home owns the property, and it's a loss. But anyway, what I'm saying is a lot of these older homes here in the East Bay Hills do not have a foundation that will sustain or recover from a big earthquake like what is predicted. They're talking about another 7.0 and as high as an 8.0. That is huge. That is a huge earthquake. And what I'm suggesting everybody do is take an inventory of what you have available. You'll need at least 3 days of fresh water or ability to access water. And think about this. In the event of an earthquake, we already know, EB Mud already knows that their system will not be reliable and will probably be down for a while because a lot of the piping is extremely old and a lot of the reservoirs are in the hills, and some of them actually sit on the fault lines, and those are the ones that are highly likely to rupture in the event of a really high earthquake like an 8.0. And EB Mud, way in the decades ago, had a reservoir in Hayward that actually failed and washed away a whole bunch of homes a lot downstream of that reservoir. But these are things that we have to prepare for, that we need to be aware of. You need to have food and water for at least 3 days without having to access your plumbing in the home because it may not be available. Also, we suggest for those with gas meters, have a gas meter wrench close by so that you can turn it off immediately. Because back in 1989, when that earthquake hit, it surprised all of us. I turned off the gas to my home and to a lot of my neighbors' home, because they didn't have a gas wrench, and until it was Alameda Electric that gave the all clear sign and let us know that we could or actually they sent representatives to restart everything because they wanted to check the homes. But they said that if you didn't turn off your gas previously, you're not smelling gas now, go ahead and relight your hot water heaters and your gas stoves if you have a pilot light on the gas stoves. But these are things that we need to plan for, because then it could end up like what we saw in San Francisco in the marina, because gas pipes ruptured, homes burned. Homes also collapsed because a lot of the marina was built on landfill. So we know about liquefaction, and I have a great story about liquefaction that didn't make the news because it would have been bad press for this developer out there in Harbor Bay. My wife and I witnessed it. We lived just a few blocks away. We went on our bicycles to go actually view the damage to the entire parkway. And they worked round the clock, 24 hours for 4 days, and restored everything. When the parkway reopened, it looked like nothing had ever occurred. Buildings were fine for the most part. Roads were all repaired, parking lots all repaired and repainted. So there was a lot of damage. Homes, a lot of these homes in the Oakland Hills, like I said, were put in place before the deep pilings to keep homes from sliding. My parents' home was one of those, built in the 50s, 1952. Didn't have any real footings going deep into the ground to keep the home from sliding and bending as grounds moved, and also earthquakes occurred during the time. In fact, my dad's earthquake, here's the tip. Check your insurance policy, because unless you have the California earthquake insurance, your homeowner's insurance will not cover in the event of your home being damaged or even falling down, collapsing because of an earthquake. But if your home caught fire in the event of that collapse, you would be covered. Where my dad, his home, the chimney had fallen away because it was brick, unreinforced brick chimney that no longer is allowed here in California, but their grandfather. So anyway, the chimney was heavily damaged. Part of it fell off, and he couldn't fix it. And the insurance company said that there was a deductible, and it was 5% of the value of the home. So in my dad's case, the home was worth about $150,000. So they said $15,000 is your deductible, and that's what you would have to pay. Well, my dad didn't have $15,000 lying around. And so these are some of the things that you have to think about and plan for when that earthquake happens. It's not if, it is a when. I've been through this. My family has been through this. Even back in 1906, my great-grandfather and my grandfather experienced that 1906 earthquake. And the stories that my grandfather told me was pretty shocking at the events at that time. But anyway, plan for at least 3 days. I would plan for more. Another thing that you need to plan for is the likelihood that you may not be able to go back into your house because there's so much damage sustained through the shaking and lifting and dropping of the ground. So you would need an alternative shelter to get you by, because it could be in the winter, because we never know when these earthquakes hit, and you have to be prepared with a plan A, plan B, and a plan C. Also plan that PG&E electricity will not be available. In 1989, we didn't have electricity for 2.5 days out in Harbor Bay. And City of Alameda has their own electric bureau, which buys electricity from PG&E. And they had to come out, check all the underground lines to make sure everything was safe before they energized the entire system. And so 2.5 days without electricity. We did a lot of barbecuing, to say the least. So plan on propane stoves, charcoal stoves, or something similar. Camping stoves are good, but if you have backyard room to put an outdoor stove, barbecue pits, that would be kind of planning for the future and that earthquake. Not, again, like I said, not if, it is a when, and we're getting closer. Yeah, it's a lot of the shaking that's been going on. They're small. Over the weekend, we had a 2.8 just north of here, up in the Richmond area, Pinole area, and these are the small shakers that I saw leading up to that big earthquake in 1989. So planning is important. Shelter, food, water, and hygiene needs. Hopefully that you have a way to dispose of human waste. In the event you may want to have an emergency porta potty, like for camping, and it has a bottom tank with the blue formaldehyde fluid to keep the odors down. An RV may be okay, but plan for that. And as you've seen, I've been building a portable shower that is run by solar. Have something like that for showers, because you may not have access to the shower at home. You may have very limited access to water and no electricity. And the shower pump that you saw in my previous video, that is all solar powered. And so that's one of the other things that we should also look at, is an alternative power source for you, exterior of the home. And this could be kept in a yard shed, a storage unit, and for that emergency. And so planning ahead, that is what we all need to do. The advice on TV is good, but we need to be better prepared, because City of Oakland does not have the ability to respond to an emergency like this. Because back then, even the City of Alameda could not respond to what was going on just in the City of Alameda, not to mention all the other cities. In San Francisco, we had the collapse of a lot of homes in the marina. We had red tag buildings in the Tenderloin. Here in Oakland, we had the collapse of a portion of the Bay Bridge. Like I said, we had a lot of damage on homes in the hills, and that home that I said that slid away, that was in the winter, in January. I don't remember the exact year, but I believe it was 1990. That home slid away just months after the big earthquake. And fortunately, no lives were lost. But we need to all prepare for that big earthquake. Electricity, solar power is about the best solution. Running generators That's fine until you run out of gas. It could be a week, it could be a month, could be longer. So solar keeps you energized, keeps food in the refrigerator, or at least the ability to run the refrigerator for a time to keep your food from spoiling and to have some way to store your food safely. So thanks for joining me today. We'll be right back.